My son cheated on his pregnant wife, then got mad when I refused to cut her off. He married the woman he had an affair with and expected me to welcome her with open arms. I chose to maintain my relationship with his ex and my granddaughter instead. I, 58F, raised my 2 children mostly alone after my husband passed away from cancer when they were young. My son Michael, 32M, and daughter Emily, 29F, were just 12 and 9 when it happened. I did everything I could to provide them with a stable home and tried to instill the values my late husband and I believed in: honesty, loyalty, and doing the right thing even when it's hard. About 8 years ago, I met James through a community group. He was kind, patient, and understood that my children would always be important to me. We married when Michael and Emily were in their early 20s. James never tried to replace their father but became a supportive presence in our lives. The issue that brought me here started 5 years ago. Michael had been married to Jessica, 30F, for 3 years at that point. I always had a good relationship with Jessica. She grew up in foster care and never had a stable family. When she married Michael, she started calling me mom almost immediately. It touched me, and I welcomed her as part of our family. 5 years ago, Jessica came to my house on a Tuesday morning. I remember because I had just finished gardening and was about to make lunch. She looked like she hadn't slept. Jessica was 6 months pregnant with my first grandchild at the time. She showed me messages on her phone between Michael and a woman he worked with. The messages made it clear they had been having an affair for months. I sat with Jessica at my kitchen table for hours that day. She cried until she had no tears left. I made her tea and held her hand. I told her that whatever she decided to do, I would support her. The next day, Michael called me. He told me that Jessica had confronted him about the affair and that he had admitted to it. He asked if he could stay with me for a few days while they figured things out. When Michael arrived at my house, I let him in but made it clear I wasn't going to pretend what he did was okay. I asked him why he would risk his marriage and hurt Jessica this way, especially while she was carrying their child. Michael got defensive. He said that things with Jessica hadn't been good for a while, that she was always focused on the pregnancy and her nursing job, and that he felt neglected. I told Michael that I was deeply disappointed in him. His father had been faithful to me through 20 years of marriage, through good times and difficult ones. Michael raised his voice then. He said that I should be on his side because I was his mother, not Jessica's. I told him that being his mother didn't mean I would support him when he was clearly in the wrong. Emily came over later that evening. She pulled me aside and told me she agreed that Michael was wrong but suggested I try not to take sides too obviously to keep peace in the family. I understood what she was saying, but I couldn't bring myself to stay neutral about something that went against everything I believed in. Michael left my house that night. He went to stay with a friend. Over the next few months, I only saw him at the divorce hearings. Jessica filed for divorce almost immediately. I left messages for Michael several times, saying I was ready to talk whenever he was, but he never responded. Jessica continued to visit me regularly. She would bring flowers from the market or cookies she baked. She still called me mom and kept me updated on the pregnancy. After baby Lily was born, Jessica brought her to visit at least once a week. I loved spending time with them. Jessica never tried to limit my access to my granddaughter, even though things with Michael remained strained. 2 years after the divorce, my old friend Nancy called me. Her son Thomas, 33M, had moved back to town after working abroad for several years. Nancy suggested that I introduce Thomas to Jessica. Nancy had met Jessica at several family gatherings before the divorce and had always liked her. I was hesitant at first, but Nancy insisted Thomas was a good man who was looking to settle down. I invited Jessica and Thomas to dinner at my house. Emily and her boyfriend came too, to make it less obvious that I was setting them up. Thomas and Jessica ended up talking long after everyone else had moved to the living room. They exchanged numbers that night, and Jessica texted me the next day to thank me for introducing them. Thomas and Jessica dated for about a year before they got engaged. Thomas was wonderful with Lily, who was 3 by then. He took her to the park, read her stories, and never seemed frustrated when she wanted his attention. When Thomas proposed to Jessica, Lily was there too, and he gave her a small heart necklace while giving Jessica the ring. Jessica came to my house a few weeks after the engagement. She asked if I would walk her down the aisle at the wedding. She explained that at her wedding to Michael, she had walked alone because she had no family. Now she wanted me beside her. I agreed immediately. I was honored that she wanted me to have that role in her wedding. A couple of days later, Michael called me. It was the first time we had spoken directly in almost 3 years. He occasionally sent birthday and Christmas cards for Lily to my address, but otherwise, he had maintained his distance. On the phone, he was furious. He said Emily had told him I was planning to walk Jessica down the aisle at her wedding. He told me I was betraying him by remaining close to Jessica after the divorce. He said it was bad enough that I still spent time with her and Lily, but participating in her wedding to another man was crossing a line. I remained calm during the call and explained that Jessica had been part of my life for years now, and that wasn't going to change just because they were no longer married. I reminded him that his own actions had led to the divorce, and that he couldn't expect me to cut Jessica and Lily out of my life. Michael told me that if I went to the wedding, he would never speak to me again. Then he hung up. I talked to James about the situation that night. He said he understood why I wanted to support Jessica, but he also suggested that perhaps Michael had a point about me walking her down the aisle being too much. Emily had a similar reaction when I told her. She thought I should maintain my relationship with Jessica and Lily but wondered if being in the wedding was taking it too far. Despite their concerns, I decided to walk Jessica down the aisle. The wedding was beautiful, and Jessica looked radiant. Lily was the flower girl and kept running back and forth between Jessica and me before the ceremony. Thomas's family welcomed me warmly, and Nancy hugged me and thanked me for bringing Jessica into their lives. Michael called me the day after the wedding. He used language I had never heard from him before, calling me names and saying I had chosen Jessica over my own son. He brought up that I hadn't attended his second wedding, to the woman he had the affair with, Lauren, 29F. I hadn't gone because Michael had only invited me a week before the ceremony, and the invitation felt like an afterthought. Also, I had met Lauren once before the wedding, and she had made several dismissive comments about Jessica and how Michael had upgraded. James was present during this call and heard everything Michael said. Afterward, he told me that while he supported my decision to maintain a relationship with Jessica and Lily, maybe Michael had a point about me treating Jessica more like a daughter than I treated Lauren. Emily called later that day and unequivocally supported my decision to attend the wedding. I started to question whether I had made the right choice. Yes, Jessica had become like a daughter to me over the years, and Lily was my granddaughter. But Michael was my son, my flesh and blood. Had I been unfair to him? To be very clear, if Jessica had been the one who cheated on Michael, especially while pregnant, I would have supported my son completely. But that wasn't what happened. Michael went no contact with me because I refused to cut Jessica out of my life after he betrayed her. He only reached out when he wanted to announce his marriage to Lauren. I reluctantly agreed to meet Michael and Lauren for dinner about 6 months after they got married. I hoped that maybe Lauren would show some remorse for her part in breaking up Michael's first marriage, or at least show some positive qualities that would help me understand what Michael saw in her. Instead, Lauren spent most of the dinner talking about her job and her plans to redecorate their house. She made a point of mentioning that she didn't want children anytime soon, which struck me as insensitive given the situation with Lily. At one point, Lauren said that she had done Michael a favor by helping him escape his marriage to Jessica before it got even worse. She said Michael wasn't ready to be a father when Lily was born and that I should be grateful to her for saving him from a life he didn't want. That was the final straw for me. I told Michael that I couldn't support his relationship with Lauren and wouldn't be attending their wedding. He made his choices, and I made mine. I chose not to be part of what I saw as a continuation of his poor decisions. After that dinner, Michael and I barely spoke. He visited Lily occasionally, but from what Jessica told me, the visits were infrequent and short. Jessica never prevented him from seeing Lily, but she didn't go out of her way to facilitate their relationship either. My late husband valued honesty and integrity above all else. He would have been deeply disappointed in Michael's behavior. James understands my position and, while he initially suggested Michael might have a point about the wedding, he has been consistently supportive of my relationship with Jessica and Lily. I sometimes wonder where I went wrong with Michael. I tried to raise him with the same values his father and I shared. I encouraged him to take responsibility for his actions and to treat others with respect. When I remarried, I made sure James felt included in our family while respecting the memory of my late husband. I never enabled Michael's poor behavior as a child or teenager. Yet somehow, he still turned into someone who could cheat on his pregnant wife and then expect everyone to take his side. Was I wrong to go to Jessica's wedding? Update 1. First of all, I want to thank everyone who commented on my original post. Reading your perspectives helped me feel less alone in this situation. Even the few people who called me a bad mother made me think about how my actions might have been perceived by Michael, though I still believe I made the right choices. Michael emailed me last week asking if we could talk. I agreed but set some ground rules. I told him that I wouldn't tolerate him yelling or name-calling like the last time we spoke, and that I expected him to remain civil while I was speaking. He agreed to these conditions. Michael came to my house yesterday afternoon. James was at work, and Emily was in her room. She's been staying with us while saving for a house with her fiancé. When Michael arrived, he looked tired. His hair was unkempt, and his clothes were wrinkled. We sat in the living room and made awkward small talk for a few minutes. I asked about Lauren, and he just nodded and said she was fine. After a period of silence, Michael's eyes filled with tears. Not sobbing, just a quiet kind of crying that was somehow worse. I moved to sit next to him on the couch and told him he could talk to me. Michael apologized for his reaction to me attending Jessica's wedding. He admitted that he understood why I might be ashamed of him. Then he told me that his marriage to Lauren wasn't going well. He said that Lauren wasn't the person he thought she was, and that he now realized how good he had it with Jessica. According to Michael, Jessica took care of their home, worked her nursing job, and still made time for their relationship. He confessed that he had treated her terribly and hadn't appreciated what he had. Now, he and Lauren fought constantly. He said he knew he had made a huge mistake. What seemed to hurt Michael the most was his relationship with Lily. He told me that during his last visit with her, she kept referring to Thomas as daddy. When Michael tried to get her to call him dad instead, she had a tantrum and screamed that he wasn't her daddy. Michael broke down completely as he told me this part. I asked Michael a question that had been bothering me. Would he miss Jessica if Lauren did all the things for him that Jessica used to do? He didn't answer, which told me everything I needed to know. I suggested that perhaps he only valued Jessica for what she did for him rather than who she was as a person. I told Michael about my relationship with his father. We weren't together because we fulfilled each other's needs, we were together because we loved each other. and that love didn't disappear when one of us was vulnerable or needed support. Michael, on the other hand, left Jessica when she was at her most vulnerable, pregnant and building a future for their family. My words hit Michael hard. He sobbed openly then. He tried to put some of the blame on Lauren, saying she had manipulated him. That's when I lost my temper. I told Michael to stop blaming others for his mistakes. It was his decision to cheat, his decision to leave Jessica, and his decision to be an absent father to Lily. He couldn't escape responsibility and then wonder why nobody took his side. I pointed out that he hadn't learned anything if he was still calling Lauren names, just as he had once claimed she was better than Jessica. I reminded him that he had choices all along. He could have resisted when Lauren pursued him. He could have addressed any issues in his marriage to Jessica directly. Instead, he created a fantasy where Jessica didn't care about him because she was focused on her education and the baby. I told Michael that his actions didn't just disappoint me, they would have deeply disappointed his father too. And I warned him that he would continue to suffer unless he took full responsibility for what he had done. Michael told me he knew I was disappointed in him and wanted to make things right. He said he felt trapped in his marriage to Lauren and believed it was karma punishing him for how he had treated Jessica and Lily. I laid out what I thought he needed to do to become a better man. First, he needed to apologize to Jessica and work on building a cordial relationship with her for Lily's sake. I warned him that Lily already saw Thomas as her father, so he shouldn't expect her to start calling him dad anytime soon, but he needed to try to be present in her life. I also suggested he apologize to Emily, who had been caught in the middle of our family conflict. As for his marriage to Lauren, I advised him to either get counseling or consider divorce if he was truly miserable. I promised to support whatever decision he made, though I made it clear that my support didn't extend to Lauren unless she apologized to Jessica for her role in breaking up their marriage. Finally, I told Michael that despite my disappointment, I still loved him. I would always try to guide him toward what was right. He would always be my son, but this was his opportunity to become a better man. I believe in second chances, and I hoped he would make the most of this one. I told him I was proud that he had at least acknowledged his wrongdoings. Michael left after our conversation. He hugged me before he went, something he hadn't done in years. I don't know what will happen next, but for the first time in a long time, I have hope that our family might heal. Update 2. Hello everyone. Thank you for all the supportive comments on my previous posts. It's been a month since my conversation with Michael, and I wanted to share some developments. Emily moved out of our house last week. She and her fiancé found a place they could afford, and while I'm happy for them, the house feels empty without her. James and I are adjusting to having the place to ourselves again. Speaking of James, I finally talked to him about how much I sometimes miss my late husband. One of the commenters on my original post suggested I might be holding on to my late husband's memory too tightly, and it made me realize I had never really discussed this with James. We had a long conversation about it one evening after dinner. James surprised me with his understanding. He told me that he occasionally misses his first wife too, who passed away from a stroke before we met. He still keeps a photo of her in his wallet. I never minded this, just as he never minded the photos of my late husband that I keep around the house. James said that the pain of losing a spouse is something only those who have experienced it can truly understand, and he doesn't feel betrayed when I mention my late husband. Rather, he sees it as honoring an important part of my past and the father of my children. After our talk, I found myself loving James even more for his compassion and wisdom. Jessica and Thomas are doing well. Jessica called me yesterday with news. They're expecting a baby. She's about 3 months along and glowing with happiness. Thomas has been reading every parenting book he can find, and Lily is excited about becoming a big sister. Jessica asked if I would be the godmother to their baby. I was overwhelmed by the request and haven't given her an answer yet. I'm honored that she wants me to have this role in their child's life, but I'm still thinking about what it would mean, especially in relation to my complicated family dynamics. As for Michael, he's made some significant changes. He told me 2 weeks ago that he and Lauren have separated. He didn't go into details, but he mentioned they had fundamental differences they couldn't resolve. Michael has started seeing a therapist, which I fully support. He's never been one to talk about his feelings, so this is a major step for him. His relationship with Lily remains challenging. Last weekend, I invited both Michael and Lily to my house. I acted as a buffer between them, which seemed to help. We played board games in the living room, and while Lily was still reserved around Michael, she didn't run away or throw a tantrum when he tried to talk to her. Small steps, but progress nonetheless. Michael told me he spoke with Jessica about modifying the custody arrangement so he could spend more time with Lily. Jessica refused, saying she couldn't trust him based on his pattern of unreliability over the past few years. This was hard for Michael to hear, but I reminded him that trust takes time to rebuild, and he shouldn't give up on being a father to Lily. He needs to prove through consistent actions that he's committed to being present in her life. I've noticed positive changes in Michael's attitude. He's less defensive and more willing to acknowledge his mistakes. He's stopped blaming Lauren for his problems and is focusing on what he can control, his own behavior and choices. I believe he's genuinely trying to become a better person, and I'm cautiously optimistic about his future. Thank you again to everyone who offered advice and support. Your comments helped me navigate this difficult family situation with more clarity and confidence. Update 3. It's been 3 months since my last update, and a lot has changed in our family. I wanted to share these developments with the community that has been so supportive throughout this journey. Michael finalized his divorce from Lauren last month. The process was surprisingly amicable, from what he told me. They had no children and few shared assets, which simplified matters. Michael has moved into a small apartment closer to where Jessica and Thomas live, which makes it easier for him to visit Lily. Speaking of Lily, there's been significant improvement in her relationship with Michael. They've established a routine where he takes her to the park every Saturday morning. Last week, he attended her kindergarten play, where she played a tree. It wasn't a speaking role, but Michael brought her flowers afterward and told me how proud he was. Jessica allows these visits but still maintains firm boundaries. She doesn't leave Michael alone with Lily yet, but she no longer feels the need to supervise every interaction herself. Thomas often drops Lily off at the park and picks her up afterward, and he and Michael have developed a civil, if somewhat distant, relationship. Michael continues with his therapy and recently joined a men's support group focused on personal accountability. He tells me they discuss topics like emotional maturity and healthy relationships. The Michael the first see now bears little resemblance to the angry, defensive man who called me names after Jessica's wedding. He's more thoughtful, speaks more slowly, and seems to consider the impact of his words before saying them. Last month, Michael did something that truly surprised me. He apologized to Jessica. He asked if they could meet for coffee, and though Jessica was hesitant, she agreed as long as it was in a public place. Michael later told me he had prepared what he wanted to say, but when the moment came, his planned speech went out the window. Instead, he simply acknowledged how badly he had hurt her and told her he would spend the rest of his life trying to be a better father to Lily. He didn't ask for forgiveness or try to explain his actions. He just wanted her to know he recognized the pain he had caused. Jessica told me about the meeting afterward. She said she appreciated Michael's apology but made it clear that while she was willing to co-parent with him, they would never be friends. Too much damage had been done. Michael accepted this without argument, which Jessica said was perhaps the most surprising part of their conversation. As for Jessica and Thomas, they found out they're having a boy. Jessica is 5 months along now and has started setting up the nursery. Lily helps by placing stuffed animals around the room and telling them to protect the baby. I've been joining them for weekly dinners, and Thomas's parents often come too. They've embraced me as a sort of extended family member, which has been unexpected but wonderful. I decided to accept Jessica's offer to be godmother to their baby. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that these connections, the ones we choose rather than the ones we're born into, are precious and worth nurturing. James fully supported my decision and has even been helping me pick out items for the baby. Emily is planning her wedding for next spring. She asked if Michael could be invited, and I told her that was entirely her decision. She's decided to include him but has made it clear to Michael that any drama would result in him being asked to leave. Michael assured her he would be on his best behavior and even offered to sit at a different table from Jessica and Thomas. Looking back on the past 5 years, I never could have predicted how things would unfold. The family I have now looks very different from what I once imagined. There are still awkward moments and old wounds that haven't fully healed. Michael and Jessica may never have anything beyond a cordial co-parenting relationship. Lily may always feel closer to Thomas than to Michael. But we're all trying, in our own ways, to move forward and create something positive from a difficult situation. I no longer question whether I was wrong to attend Jessica's wedding or to maintain my relationship with her after the divorce. Those decisions, though painful at the time, allowed me to be part of Jessica and Lily's lives during these important years. They also, perhaps unexpectedly, created space for Michael to recognize his mistakes and begin to change. If there's one thing I've learned through all of this, it's that family isn't just about blood. It's about showing up, day after day, for the people you care about. It's about holding firm to your values, even when it would be easier to look the other way. And sometimes, it's about forgiveness, not forgetting or excusing past hurts, but finding a way to move forward despite them. Thank you, everyone, for being part of this journey with me. Your advice and support helped me find my way through some very dark days. I hope my story might help others facing similar family conflicts to navigate their own paths forward. Now let's move to the next story. Story 2. My husband's sister moved in after a messy breakup and it nearly ended my marriage. Now she's back with her ex, and you won't believe what happens next. I never thought I'd be posting here, but I could use some outside perspective. This is going to be a long one, so buckle up. My husband Mark, 32M, and I, 30F, have been married for 5 years, together for 8. We met in college. I was a junior studying education, and he was a senior in computer science. It was one of those whirlwind romances where everything just clicked. We moved in together after I graduated, got married a year later, and started our family soon after. We have 2 beautiful children, Lily, 4F, and Ethan, 2M. I left my job as a kindergarten teacher when Lily was born to be a stay-at-home mom, while Mark works as a software engineer at a tech startup. It's been challenging at times, especially financially, but we've always made it work. Mark comes from a close-knit family. He has a younger sister, Amy, 28F, who he's always been protective of. I knew this going into our marriage, but I never realized how much it would impact our lives. Amy had been with her boyfriend Tom, 29M, since college. They seemed like the perfect couple, always finishing each other's sentences, planning elaborate surprises for each other, the works. They got engaged last year, and we were all thrilled. Amy asked me to be her maid of honor, and we spent months planning her dream wedding. Then, about 6 months ago, everything fell apart. Amy discovered that Tom had been cheating on her with multiple women for the last 2 years of their relationship. It came out in the worst way possible. She found messages on his phone while he was in the shower. She confronted him, and he didn't even try to deny it. He just packed a bag and left. Amy was devastated. She couldn't bear to stay in the apartment she shared with Tom, surrounded by memories and half-finished wedding plans. That's when Mark, being the protective older brother, immediately offered our guest room to Amy. And here's where the problems began. He did this without discussing it with me first. I was initially sympathetic to Amy's situation. I mean, who wouldn't be? Finding out your fiancé of 7 years had been unfaithful must be heart-wrenching. I agreed to let her stay with us for a while, thinking it would be temporary. A month, maybe 2 at most. But as weeks turned into months, I started feeling increasingly frustrated. Amy seemed to have no plans to move out or find her own place. She works from home as a graphic designer, so she was always around the house. At first, I appreciated the extra help with the kids. Amy would play with Lily while I put Ethan down for a nap, or she'd watch them for an hour so I could go grocery shopping alone, a rare luxury for a mom of 2 young kids. However, I soon realized that Amy's presence was causing more problems than it solved. She had a habit of leaving her belongings all over the house. I'd find her dirty coffee mugs in the sink, her laundry draped over the living room couch, and her work materials spread out on the dining table. I found myself constantly cleaning up after her, on top of taking care of my own children and household chores. Moreover, Amy's emotional state was affecting our family dynamics. She would often burst into tears during dinner, recounting her relationship with Tom and how he betrayed her. While I understood her pain, it was becoming increasingly difficult to shield my children from her emotional outbursts. Lily started asking why Aunt Amy was always sad, and I didn't know how to explain the complexities of adult relationships to a 4-year-old. I tried talking to Mark about the situation several times, but he always brushed off my concerns. He would say things like, "Amy's going through a tough time, we need to support her," or "It's just for a little while longer, she'll move out soon." But as the months went by, there was no sign of Amy making any effort to find her own place. The breaking point came during Lily's 4th birthday party. We had planned a small celebration with just family and a few close friends. Amy offered to bake the birthday cake, which I thought was a nice gesture. I had my hands full organizing everything else, so I gladly accepted her offer. However, on the morning of the party, I came downstairs to find Amy sobbing in the kitchen, surrounded by a mess of flour, eggs, and burnt cake layers. She had attempted to make the cake but got distracted by a social media post of Tom with his new girlfriend. The sight of them together, smiling and carefree, had sent her into an emotional tailspin. I had to rush to the bakery to get a last-minute cake while also trying to comfort Lily, who was upset that her aunt was crying on her birthday. Mark spent most of the party consoling Amy in the guest room, leaving me to host our guests and entertain the children alone. It was exhausting and frustrating, and I couldn't help but feel resentful. That evening, after the guests had left and the kids were in bed, I confronted Mark about the situation. I told him that while I sympathized with Amy, her presence was negatively impacting our family life. I suggested that we help Amy find her own apartment and perhaps contribute to her first month's rent to get her started. To my shock, Mark became defensive and accused me of being selfish and unsupportive. He said that I didn't understand the bond between siblings and that he couldn't just abandon his sister in her time of need. He then dropped a bombshell. He had promised Amy that she could stay with us for as long as she needed, potentially up to a year. I was furious that Mark had made such a significant decision without consulting me. I told him that it was unfair to make unilateral decisions that affected our entire family. I pointed out that I was the one dealing with the day-to-day consequences of Amy's presence, from the extra housework to the emotional strain on our children. Mark's response was to tell me that if I couldn't handle having Amy around, perhaps I should be the one to leave for a while. He suggested that I take the kids and stay with my parents until I could get over my issues with Amy. I was stunned by his suggestion. It felt like he was choosing his sister over his wife and children. I realized that this wasn't just about Amy anymore, it was about the fundamental lack of respect and consideration in our marriage. The next day, while Mark was at work and Amy was out running errands, I packed bags for myself and the kids. I left a note for Mark explaining that I was taking him up on his suggestion and staying with my parents for a while. I told him that I needed time to think about our marriage and what it meant that he was willing to prioritize his sister's comfort over his family's well-being. It's been a week since I left. Mark has been calling and texting nonstop, alternating between apologies and accusations. My parents have been incredibly supportive, helping with the kids and giving me space to process everything. I'm at a loss for what to do next. I love Mark, and we've built a life together, but I can't help feeling betrayed by his actions. Am I overreacting to the situation with Amy? Should I go back home and try to make it work, or is this a sign of deeper issues in our marriage? Update 1: It's been a month since my last post, and a lot has happened. First, I want to thank everyone for their supportive comments and advice. It really helped me gain perspective on the situation and gave me the courage to stand my ground. After about 2 weeks at my parents' house, Mark finally agreed to meet with me without Amy present. We met at a quiet coffee shop near our home, the same place where we used to have study dates in college. Walking in brought back a flood of memories, both sweet and bittersweet. The conversation was tense at first. Mark looked tired, with dark circles under his eyes, and I could tell he hadn't been sleeping well. Part of me wanted to reach out and comfort him, but I reminded myself why we were here. As we talked, it became clear that there were deeper issues at play than just the situation with Amy. Mark confessed that he had been feeling guilty about Amy's breakup. Apparently, he had known about Tom's infidelity for months before Amy found out, but he didn't tell her because he thought it wasn't his place to interfere. When Amy discovered the truth, Mark felt responsible for her pain and believed he needed to make it up to her by providing unlimited support. This revelation shocked me. I couldn't believe Mark had kept such a big secret, not only from Amy but from me as well. It explained his overprotectiveness, but it didn't excuse his behavior towards our family. I explained to Mark how his decision had affected our family life. I told him about the constant mess I had to clean up, the emotional toll of Amy's outbursts on the kids, and how I felt like a guest in my own home. I described how hurt I felt that he hadn't considered my feelings or consulted me before making such a big decision. I also pointed out that by enabling Amy's dependence, we weren't actually helping her move forward with her life. Mark listened, really listened, for what felt like the first time in months. He apologized for not considering my perspective and admitted that he had been so focused on helping Amy that he had neglected his responsibilities as a husband and father. After a long discussion, we agreed on a plan. Mark would talk to Amy and give her a timeline of 3 months to find her own place. We would help her search for apartments and even offer to cover her first month's rent, but she needed to understand that our home couldn't be her permanent solution. Mark also agreed to attend couples counseling with me to work on our communication issues. He realized that making unilateral decisions about our family wasn't fair, and he wanted to learn how to be a better partner. When we returned home, Mark had a serious talk with Amy. To our surprise, she was more receptive than we expected. She admitted that she had been taking advantage of our hospitality and that she knew it was time for her to stand on her own feet. She even apologized to me for the strain she had put on our family. Over the next few weeks, things slowly started to improve. Amy made an effort to keep her belongings tidy and even started cooking meals for the family to contribute. She began actively looking for apartments and reached out to friends about potential job opportunities that would allow her to afford her own place. Mark and I attended our first counseling session, which was eye-opening for both of us. We realized that we had fallen into patterns of poor communication and taking each other for granted. The counselor gave us exercises to practice active listening and expressing our needs more clearly. It was uncomfortable at first, but we both committed to putting in the effort. However, just as things were looking up, we hit another snag. Amy announced that she had reconnected with Tom and was considering giving him another chance. She said they had been talking, and Tom had promised to go to therapy to work on his issues. Amy seemed hopeful, saying that maybe this breakup was the wake-up call their relationship needed. Mark was furious, feeling that all the pain and disruption had been for nothing if Amy was just going to go back to her cheating ex. This led to a huge argument between Mark and Amy, with Mark yelling that Amy was making a huge mistake and Amy accusing Mark of trying to control her life. I found myself in the middle, trying to calm both siblings down while also protecting my children from the shouting match. Lily was in tears, not understanding why everyone was yelling, and Ethan picked up on the tension and started wailing. It was a mess. The incident made me realize that while we had made progress, we still had a long way to go. Mark's overprotectiveness of Amy was still an issue, and Amy's emotional dependence on us hadn't fully resolved. I'm trying to stay positive and focus on the improvements we've made, but I can't help feeling anxious about what will happen if Amy does get back together with Tom. Will we be expected to welcome him into our home too? How will this affect the progress we've made in our marriage? I'm committed to working on my relationship with Mark, but I also know that I need to set firm boundaries. We have another counseling session tomorrow, and I plan to bring up my concerns about Amy's potential reconciliation with Tom. This whole experience has taught me the importance of standing up for myself and my family. I'm no longer willing to be a doormat, but I'm also trying to approach the situation with empathy and understanding. It's a difficult balance to strike, and I'm still learning. I'll update again when there are new developments. Thank you all again for your support and advice. It means more than you know. Update 2. It's been another 2 months since my last update, and I'm happy to report that things have significantly improved, although not without some challenges along the way. First, the good news: Amy moved out last week. She found a small studio apartment about 20 minutes away from us. It's not fancy, but it's all her own, and she seems excited about having her own space again. Mark and I helped her move and got her settled in. It was a bittersweet moment. We were glad to have our home back to ourselves, but we also realized how much we'd grown accustomed to having her around. The process of Amy moving out wasn't entirely smooth. There were a few setbacks along the way. About a month ago, she lost her freelance graphic design job due to budget cuts at the company she was working for. This led to a panic where she thought she wouldn't be able to afford to move out. Mark was ready to extend her stay, but I stood firm on our agreed timeline. Instead, we helped Amy update her portfolio and connected her with some of our friends who needed design work. Thankfully, she managed to secure a new job at a local marketing firm, which allowed her to stick to the moving out plan. As for Amy and Tom, that situation resolved itself in an unexpected way. Amy did meet up with Tom to talk things over, but instead of reconciling, she got the closure she needed. She realized that she deserved better than someone who had betrayed her trust so thoroughly. It was a proud moment for all of us when she stood her ground and told Tom that she was moving on with her life. Mark and I have continued our couples counseling, and it's been incredibly helpful. We've learned to communicate better and to consider each other's perspectives before making decisions. Mark has made a conscious effort to consult me on family matters, and I've been working on expressing my needs more clearly instead of bottling things up until I reach a breaking point. One particularly breakthrough moment came when our counselor had us do a role reversal exercise. Mark had to put himself in my shoes and imagine how he would feel if my brother had moved in without warning and disrupted our family life. It was like a light bulb went off for him, and he finally understood why I had been so frustrated. However, we did face a new challenge recently. Mark's parents found out about the whole situation with Amy moving out, and they were not happy. They called us and berated Mark for abandoning his sister. They even suggested that I had manipulated Mark into kicking Amy out. It was a tense phone call, and I could see Mark struggling between standing up for our decision and not wanting to disappoint his parents. In the end, Mark surprised me. He calmly explained to his parents that the decision for Amy to move out was mutual and that it was in everyone's best interest. He told them that while we love Amy, we needed to prioritize our nuclear family and that Amy needed to learn to stand on her own feet. His parents weren't thrilled, but they seemed to accept his explanation. This incident showed me how much Mark has grown over the past few months. The old Mark might have caved to his parents' pressure, but this time he stood firm in our united decision. As for me, I've started thinking about my own future now that I'm not constantly managing Amy's presence in our home. I'm considering taking some online courses to update my skills, with the idea of possibly returning to work part-time once Ethan starts preschool next year. Mark has been supportive of this idea, even offering to adjust his work schedule to help with childcare if needed. While things aren't perfect, I feel like we're on the right track. Our home feels peaceful again, and there's a renewed sense of partnership in our marriage. We're both committed to continuing our counseling and working on our relationship. I'm cautiously optimistic about the future. This experience, as difficult as it was, has ultimately made our family stronger. We've learned valuable lessons about boundaries, communication, and the importance of prioritizing our marriage and children. Thank you all for your support throughout this journey. Your advice and encouragement have been invaluable. Update 3. It's been 6 months since my last update, and I'm happy to report that life has settled into a new, positive rhythm for our family. Amy has been thriving in her independence. She's excelling at her new job and has even started dating someone new, a kind, responsible guy she met through a work project. She comes over for dinner once a week, and it's nice to have a relationship with her that's not clouded by resentment or obligation. Mark and I have continued our counseling, though we've reduced it to monthly check-ins now. We've developed much healthier communication patterns and have become better at supporting each other. Mark has been much more considerate about consulting me on decisions that affect our family, and I've gotten better at expressing my needs before they become overwhelming. As for me, I started taking online courses in digital marketing 3 months ago. It's been challenging to balance studying with taking care of the kids, but Mark has been incredibly supportive. He's taken on more household responsibilities and often takes the kids out on weekends so I can have uninterrupted study time. It feels good to be working towards something for myself again, and I'm excited about the possibilities it might open up for our family's future. We had a bit of a hiccup last month when Mark's company announced potential layoffs. For a week, we were stressed about the possibility of losing his income. It made me realize how vulnerable we were with only one income, which reinforced my decision to work towards re-entering the workforce. We spent sleepless nights discussing contingency plans and updating our resumes, just in case. Fortunately, Mark's job was safe, but the scare motivated us to start building up our emergency savings. We've cut back on some non-essential expenses and are putting that money aside each month. Our relationship with Mark's parents has improved slowly. They visited us last month and saw firsthand how well we're doing. They even commented on how much happier and more confident Amy seemed. I think seeing the positive outcomes has helped them understand and accept our decisions. There's still some tension, especially when they make comments about how we should be helping Amy more, but Mark has gotten better at setting boundaries with them too. Lily started kindergarten this fall, which has been a big adjustment for all of us. She was nervous at first, but she's made friends quickly and loves her teacher. Watching her grow and become more independent has been bittersweet. It's also given me more time to focus on my studies and on Ethan, who's going through a clingy phase now that his big sister isn't around all day. Looking back, I'm grateful for the challenges we faced. They forced us to confront issues in our marriage and family dynamics that we might have otherwise ignored. While it was a difficult journey, it's led us to a much healthier and happier place. Mark and I have rediscovered the connection that brought us together in the first place, and we're more committed than ever to supporting each other's growth. I've learned so much about setting boundaries, standing up for myself, and the importance of open communication in a marriage. I'm proud of how far we've come and excited about our future together. There are still challenges ahead, of course. Raising kids, balancing careers, and navigating family relationships is never easy, but I feel like we now have the tools to face them together. Thank you all for your support throughout this journey. Your advice and encouragement truly made a difference. To anyone going through similar struggles, hang in there. It's not easy, but with hard work and open communication, it is possible to come out stronger on the other side.